Let's start on the West Coast, though. Indiana traveled to Oregon in Eugene. Early start for the college game day folks out there. I think it's what this show starts at 9, so that's 6 a.m. to those people. Had to get out there bright and early to start celebrating football like we all wish we could on a Saturday morning. But number 7 versus number 3. Indiana, I think now it's not crazy to say they're in a national championship conversation. Am I wrong?
No, I fully would agree that Indiana is national championship contenders with the way they just dominated Oregon. They won the time of possession. They actually lost the turnover battle and still found a way to win the game. Aiden Fisher, that linebacker, he's a unit. And I think there was a graphic that showed, like average weight of Oregon's offensive line versus Indiana's D line, and there was a massive disparity there. And their D line, their defensive coordinator actually quote tweeted it and says like, "Uh-oh, it looks like we have no chance in the trenches." And they did have a chance in the trenches because that's where this game was won. This game was won in the trenches. And with Fernando Mendoza doing what he needs to do. But this was a great game. It was one of those games for Oregon where you were just waiting, like, is that offense going to finally show up, right? It was a lot of, like, head-scratching moments. Pardon me, Oregon lost the turnover battle. Oregon had 2 turnovers. Indiana had 1. Sorry, I misspoke there. But it was for Oregon. You were just waiting to see, is Dante Moore finally going to click it into gear? What's going to happen for Oregon? And they just couldn't. That Indiana defense was too stout. That Indiana offense was working pretty well. They got 9 more first downs than Oregon did, and they weren't amazing on third down, but they were more efficient than Oregon. Indiana was 5 for 14 on third down, whereas Oregon was 3 for 14. Those little things matter. They got over 25 more passing yards than Oregon did. I know that's not a massive difference, but in a game where you thought Oregon would take over the pass game and be that dominant passing team, I think that is a big difference there. They also got outrushed. I mean, they just lost time of possession. They just did not play that level of brand of Oregon football we expected from Dan Lanning in a rivalry matchup. Not a rivalry, but in a top matchup. And it was just shout out Indiana. They showed that they can compete in the trenches, and I think that was the biggest problem for Indiana last year, was that they were not ready in the trenches, offensively or defensively. They were getting dominated in the trenches against these really good teams, and this is that one thing that this year there's not happening to Indiana. Indiana is dominating the trenches offensively and defensively.
Yeah, Indiana with arguably its best win in program history, right? They never beat a top 5 team on the road. It's the second time they've ever beat a top 5 team in general. And Mendoza was a magician in the RPO game. I think that's what gave Indiana a good lift. If he was running it, the defense was fooled. And if he was throwing it, the ball was getting out quick. I love his decision making, and it's hard not to because it feels like he makes the right play in the right moment. He's decisive. He gets the ball to his guys, puts the offense in good positions. 20 for 31 on the day for him, 215 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. 2 things you need on the road, a run game and defense. Both absolutely showed up for Curt Cignetti's squad. Defense had 6 sacks. Oregon had 1 rushing yard in the second, or held Oregon to 1 rushing yard in the second half, 64 yards of total offense in the second half. That's a defense that's stout. You mentioned Aiden Fisher. That's a guy I had on my list too. And in one of the most underrated defenses in the country, I would say, Indiana. I think they stepped up to the plate against Oregon, held a guy who was a Heisman Trophy contender in Dante Moore to just 5.5 yards per throw, picked him off twice. And we know college football to not be a sport that is easily welcoming new teams to the party, but it seems as Indiana has kind of stepped up in that conversation. They've made their case by beating Oregon at home. Mendoza was the difference maker for me. It seems like a lovable group of hardworking guys with a head coach that is so confident everybody wants to believe that they can beat the number 1 team. They could call the movie Hoosiers or something. I think it could be a hit.
Yeah, it might be a hit if they called it that. I don't know. But, dude, I was just really, really impressed with you. You mentioned Fernando Mendoza. I was impressed with him. I was impressed with their running back, Hemby. They just looked like a more complete team against Oregon, which is crazy considering the talent Oregon has on that roster. But I think for Indiana, it's one of those games where it's like, yeah, these guys, a lot of JMU transfers still, a lot of transfers from, programs where you're not expecting them to be the top dog. And these guys just show up and they show out. They're ranked number 3 for the first time ever in the AP poll, which is cool. It's historic. And I think right now this Indiana team, the way that front is playing defensively and offensively, they can win a lot of ball games. And like I said, I think they are national title contenders. And I'll kind of I'll call myself out here. I've been very people would use the word anti-Indiana, and that's not the case. But I really was thinking Indiana was not as good as they made out to be. I know they went out and blew Illinois out, who I had ranked pretty highly, but I was still on the caution wave with Indiana, and I think now it's all aboard the Indiana hype train because I think this seems legit. They're having fun out there. They're playing well. So could this be the year for Indiana? Right? You don't know. There seems to be a lot of room in college football, but they'll still have to see Ohio State likely one day. And that Ohio State defense, let me tell you, I watched them play this week. We're going to talk about it later, but that Ohio State defense, it is for real. But so is Indiana's defense, so they'll have something to say about it.
Yeah, and I think when your coach has the level of confidence that Curt Cignetti does, mixed with borderline arrogance, that can be a pretty like that can give a team an edge. And for Indiana, they have edge. They have a little extra oomph to them. And I think even comparison to Indiana last year, I think this team is worlds different. Last year, I think maybe that I know you called it what Indiana, the Indiana hate train, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it, but it was more so just a skepticism of
Yep.
Indiana and what they could do because we've never known them to be a football school. But when you have a guy, another Coach Saban understudy in Curt Cignetti to come lead your program, he's proving to become one of the top, definitely one of the most on fire coaches that we've seen. Now his name's getting thrown around in positions open in Pennsylvania, I hear, but I don't see it. I think he's got the edge. He brings the edge to Indiana and really shut down an Oregon team that I thought could really battle. And I think Dante Moore showed a little bit of his inexperience in this game. His internal clock seemed off due to Indiana's pressure from the defensive line. He wasn't finding his guys at the usual pace that he was. The progressions I didn't feel like were really there. And the numbers prove that too. His season completion percentage is 13% higher in every other game than it was on Saturday. Averaged 60 more yards in every other game than he did on Saturday. Only thrown one pick all year, had two against Indiana. So the numbers prove it. Dante Moore didn't have his best of games, but it's certainly not over for Oregon. Plenty of good games to come for them, and a lot of hope still on the horizon for Dan Lanning's team. It did, in fact, though, just snap their 18-game win streak at home in regular season games. So the Hoosiers, Curt Cignetti, are rolling. Any more before we go down to a game I know you were watching pretty intensely on Saturday afternoon?
No, just last thoughts to be what a win for Indiana, what a win for that program, and that's cool to see. You know, everybody complained about NIL and the lack of parity in college football, and I would argue that right now with NIL, it's the most parity in this sport that we've seen in a long time, and I think that shows to the rankings each week and the upsets and the shockers. And I love where college football is at right now, and shout out to Indiana. Thanks for making me eat crow, I think is the saying, and making me you know I was wrong. Okay. I was wrong about Indiana football, and I had to admit it, take it to the chest, and I will take it to the chest. I was wrong. I doubted Fernando Mendoza. I said he wasn't even that good at Cal. He's been 10 times better at Indiana behind with that talent and their wide receivers and the weapons around him. So yeah, I'll take the L in this one, Indiana fans. I'm sorry. I doubted you guys, but you guys are a damn good ball team, and I hope you guys continue to make some noise in the Big Ten this fall.
Hoosiers going to keep making some noise. Hopefully, Curt Cignetti will have more sound bites like he did at halftime of that CBS Sports broadcast. It was pretty funny. He got sassy on the reporter